What's up, guys? Matt here, back for Thursday's edition of Every Day in the Word. It's time to open up to the book of 1 Samuel again. We've been seeing the baton being passed from Saul to David, at least in God's book, because God is now done with Saul. Not done as in like he's not going to show up in the story anymore, but done as in his favor is no longer with Saul, but is now with this young shepherd boy named David, the son of Jesse. And we see today the most familiar story, one of the most familiar stories in the whole book of the Bible, all 66 books. This is one that most of our world knows, because it's very, I don't know, it's very relatable, it's very feel good. But I want us to dig a little bit deeper than just the plot line of this story. I want us to really dig into who's the hero of this story. Is it David? I don't know. Let's figure it out right here. So again, let's set the scene. David has been now anointed by Samuel. Samuel's identified that this kid is going to be the next king of Israel, and he's going to be a great one. He's going to be the best one. And so Saul, he's still in charge at this point. And then as we saw at the end of chapter 16, David started serving Saul in his courts. He started playing the lyre. He started doing music. He started serving in other ways. So Saul knew him at this point, or at least knew who he was, I guess. And here in chapter 17, we see David basically just show up to this battle of the Philistines and the Israelites with this big, huge guy named Goliath. And Goliath is calling people out. He's making fun of the people of Israel. He's mocking God. And so this is a really bad situation. David shows up with some food for his brothers, and the brothers are like, dude, what are you doing here, man? Come on, little rugrat, like, go home. And he gets really mad because he starts to hear the insults that Goliath is putting forth towards God. He didn't like the way that David was talking. He didn't like the way that Goliath was talking about God, and so he took matters into his own hands. He went. He said, "How can this guy make fun of our God like this?" And so he went in to Saul, and he was like, "Hey, let me do this." And Saul's like, "No, like this, you're not going to do it. You're just a kid." But anyway, he eventually lets him do it. He goes out there with a couple of stones for his slingshot, no armor. And he goes and he kills this giant who is making fun of God. And we see David talking about, really, he keeps talking about God. He talks over and over again, verse 36. He says, how can this uncircumcised Philistine, how can he defy the armies of the living God? Later on, he gets to the point where he is able to address, Goliath. And he says, you come to me with sword and spear, with javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you down, and I will cut off your head, and I will give the dead bodies of the hosts of the Philistines this day to the birds of the air, and to the wild beasts of the earth, that all the assembly may know that there is a God in Israel. And that all this assembly may know that the Lord saves, not with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands. See, David here, he rightly trusts God. He rightly puts the emphasis and the focal point of the story, not on himself, but on God. He says God is going to do this, because David shouldn't have been able to kill Goliath based on his size, based on his experience. Goliath should have ate him for lunch. But God graciously allowed David to win this battle. And he does so because God is trying to show that he is the King of Kings and that he is the one true God. He is the God of Israel. And he didn't like Goliath making fun of him either, obviously. And so God, he graciously gives Goliath into the hand of, and the Philistines into the hands of the Israelites to show that God the Lord is the one to whom we should fear. So a great story about God. I know it's about David, I know it's about Goliath, but the story is ultimately about God, and I don't want you to miss that when you read this familiar story here this morning. So we go from that over to the book of John. We're back in John 8. We're going to read just a little section here, starting in verse 21, I believe, down to the end of that paragraph, down to verse 30. But Jesus here, he's confronting the confused people. They keep asking questions, and they're like, "Who are you? What are you doing? Are you gonna kill yourself because you say where I'm going you cannot come? What is your problem, Jesus?" That's basically what all of these Jews were really confused about. And I love the way that Jesus talks to them in verse 28. He speaks to this whole crowd that was really confused. He says, "When you have lifted up the Son of Man, then you will know that I am He, and that I do nothing on my own authority, but I speak just as the Father had taught me. And He who sent me is with me, and He has not left me alone, for I always do the things that are pleasing to Him." Basically what he's trying to say here is, when I am raised up, when I die on the cross, when I'm raised up on this wooden cross, you will realize who I am. You will realize that my power is not from myself, but ultimately from God. And if you think back to the story of the crucifixion, what happens? Jesus dies, and the centurions, the Roman centurions that put him to death, they look around and they say, "This truly had to have been the Son of God." They immediately identify that this guy is unlike any other guy to walk the planet. This guy is 100% God. He is the Son of God. He is from the Father. He is from above. And so Jesus here is confronting these confused people, and he's saying, "Hey, you'll realize it. You'll notice it." And I just think it's amazing that the gospel writers include little details like that of the response of the Roman centurions when Jesus dies on the cross. I think details like that are fascinating, that the Bible, the biblical authors put in there because God so faithfully wanted to preserve His word and wanted to make sure that we got those little connections right there. So I don't want you to miss that connection. It's really cool. It's really encouraging, and it should really, again, bolster your trust in the God of Israel and the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob that we were just talking about in 1 Samuel chapter 17. But I know it's a short little section, but I think when you connect it to the rest of the Bible, it makes a lot of sense, and it's really well versed because we see what Jesus talked about actually happen in real life. So now let's go over to the book of Psalms now. We read Psalm 110 yesterday, so now we're in Psalm 111 today, and this psalm is a great one for you to reflect on, to chew on today, to talk to God about this psalm. It's talking about, really, ultimately it's a worship song. It's praising God. It's praising God for how high and lifted up He is, praising God for what He's done, for His provision, for showing His people the power of His works. Verse 6 says, basically this is a psalm for you to sit down and pray and praise God for all the great things that He's done in your life, all the great things that God has done in His Word, and ultimately give Him the worship that He is due. That's what we need to be doing. That's what our church is all about, making sure that we create a high view of God. And that's something that you can do right now, even as you read this 10-verse psalm and reflect on it in your prayers. So a great one for us to meditate on, to chew on today. But now let's finish it up with just one verse from Proverbs chapter 15. Proverbs chapter 15, we're looking at verse 11. Just one verse, and it says this. It says, "Sheol and Abaddon, they lie open before the Lord. How much more the hearts of the children of man." So Sheol and Abaddon, they were basically the inner workings of hell, if you will, the intricacies. They would use these words basically to say this is the most unknowable place that anyone can know about is hell. But yet God, He knows. It says they lie open before the Lord. God knows everything about everything. And that is incredible for us to even try to wrap our minds around, which we can't even wrap our minds around that God knows everything about everything. God sees everything. God sees your every thought. He sees your every word, or hears your every word. He sees your every action. God sees how you are living right now during this quarantine. God sees the way that you interact with your parents. God sees the way that you interact with your brothers. God sees the text that you're sending to one another. God sees the post that you like online or post online. God sees every single thing in your life. In this verse here, though it's short, though it's one verse, though at first glance it may not be super clear, God knows everything. God sees everything. God is everywhere. So let that be a fearful reminder for you today to live in ultimately trepidation before God, because He is that omnipresent God. He is everywhere. He sees everything. And that is very scary in one sense, but it's very encouraging in another sense, that he sees not only your bad things, but he also sees the good things that you do with your tongue and with your thoughts and with your actions. So be encouraged by that. But I do want you to put off sin today. Be thinking about that one proverb right there today as you live your day. Proverbs chapter 15, verse 11. Let that bang around on the inside of your brain today, and let that change what you do, what you say, and what you think. So we'll be back for another edition of Every Day in the Word tomorrow, but hopefully, again, we can be hearers and doers of the Word from what we read this morning.